Good day.
Hello,
Good day.
Yuri.
Hello, Granniopteryx. We know you as Demi.
Yeah, you can call me Demi.
I'll call you Demi. I'm
I'm
used.
far too young for you to call me Granny.
Listen, finally we have a chance to talk, and there was quite a pause between us, and so many things happened. And I am in Brooklyn, New York. I think I'm streaming to some new platforms where people don't know about me and about our community here of Brooklyn Republicans. So that's what we do. And most of my programs are in Russian, and they are aimed at very narrow political goal of righting the ship of American um, life. And in order of this, every big movement is in human history is identified by what they wear on their hats, right? We know Roman helmets, we know German helmets,
We know the
with
king's
the
crown.
spike, we know the king's crown, and we have Che's beret, and we have Fidel Castro's cap, and we have Lenin's cap, which was to me as a former Soviet Union inhabitant, a citizen, now residing
Just
in
a minute.
Brooklyn, New York. Yes.
Can I add something else?
Yes,
The
sure.
English expression bigwig,
Big wig, of
which
course.
refers to the wigs that very rich people influential people used to wear in the 18th century.
Yeah, and of course the Jacobins.
Well, but that was slightly different. You
No, we
see,
don't like them.
no. That was because during the Puritan times they had to cut their hair, and then the king came back,
Hmm.
and he had these luxuriant curls,
Wow.
and I mean, you
Everybody
had to
felt
do
like
what the king did. So
consumed
then
with
they
envy.
started wearing wigs to cover their embarrassment.
Yeah. David, listen, everybody
Yeah.
was, and their uncle was talking about the coronation, and I can tell you briefly my impression as an American about it,
Go
because
ahead.
the world haven't seen it for a very long time, as long as Elizabeth
The
II.
1951, 52, or 53. I don't remember when the Queen was crowned, but it would have been sometime in the
Yeah.
first couple of years of the 50s.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was just like what, 24, 25,
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Her father died quite young.
it's yeah, and it's very touching to see the old footage of her being kind of. You can tell that she's really not uncomfortable, but she's like this is new world. She's like Alice in Wonderland, entering the totally different level. She knows and she doesn't know all of these things that surround her upon her coronation.
Yeah.
But to me, it was also a great combination of extreme comfort. People knew what they were doing. Those who were involved in those extremely uh, meticulously planned and synchronous and precise movements, and at the same time, they felt very comfortable in their skins, and not just the bear skins, but uh, it was all like this is the way
You
it's
know,
supposed
it
to
was.
be. It was.
You know what? First of all, it's even more remarkable than you think, because most of the palace, the people who were running the palace and the civil servants, they said that it would give them more time to have the coronation in September. They wanted that, and Charles insisted on it being in May. I don't know why, but it was a terrible rush. I mean, they just got over the funeral, and then they had to start, for the coronation. And the fact that they got it done in 6 months, all of that stuff, I'd say that's pretty remarkable. But there were a couple of slips that I noticed. Do you want to know about them, or would this
Of
not
course, I
interest
haven't
you?
seen the whole thing. I watched it on and off live.
Ah, well,
Please do.
Well, so I have an eye for fashion. So what happened was the king was anointed, So they took off all these garments. And that was in itself, I found that very touching, because here's this man covered in ermine and velvet and satin and embroidery and cloth of gold and all, and they took it off. So he was standing there in his shirt so they could anoint him, which is a religious significance. And I want to tell you, the oil they used to anoint him with was brought from trees that were grown on the Mount of Olives, which is where his father's mother is buried, Princess Alice. Prince Philip, his mother was a Greek, well, briefly, she was a Greek royal family, and she became a nun. Did you know that?
No.
She was a remarkable woman, very amazing, because of when she was in Greece during the war, she got these diplomatic bags full of food, because even though they were at war, there were channels. And she took all of the food, and that would have been, like caviar and ham and stuff like that. And she took it straight down to the local food bank, because there are a lot of people very hungry in Greece at that time. Yeah. And she was she had she had a Jewish family, maybe a couple of Jewish families in her flat. And she had servants. I mean, she was a princess, and if any of them had given her away, she'd have been in very, very serious trouble. But anyway, she had this or two families in a back room in her flat. And every time, and it was right across the road from the Gestapo offices. So whenever a Gestapo officer came round to check her out, because there were rumors. Now, she was deaf. She was profoundly deaf, and she could lip read in about 3 or 4 languages.
Wow.
So she knew perfectly well what that German officer was saying. But any time a German officer came to the door, it was, what shout? Yeah. And then when she, I think it was possibly in the late 50s or the early 60s, she couldn't look after herself anymore. And Philip brought her over to live in Buckingham Palace, and she was there maybe 3 or 4 years before she died. She was a chain smoker. So people who came to Buck House, they'd find this nun wandering around the corridors smoking cigarettes. Anyway, it was her wish to be buried in Jerusalem. So she was, and she was buried on the Mount of Olives, and the olives that were growing on the Mount of Olives were the olives that provided the oil that anointed King Charles.
There's a special ampoule, it's called, right?
I believe
ampoule
so.
Or something, yeah.
It was like a bottle, but it had a silver outside to protect it.
Those things are very simple.
Anyway,
this one is 1,000 years old, yeah.
Well, the inside is just a bottle, but it's got this silver cover. So anyway, there he was, just standing there in his shirt with all the pomp and circumstances taken off him. And then he went into this, behind this screen where they anointed him. And then after that, they brought him out and they put a sort of a long white shift on him, which went underneath the robe of state, the coronation robe or whatever it was called, to protect the robe from him, basically. But the white shift was made, it's supposed to resemble the priestly garment that was worn in the temple. It was just simple white linen shift. There was nothing that fancy about it. And they put that shift on, okay, and then the coronation robe. Now, I noticed something there, which would have been avoided if they'd have had more time to rehearse. When the king sat down in the coronation throne, the heavy garment was pulling outwards, and that shift, which had no fastening, it just had a fastening at the the throat, it gaped. Now he's wearing clothing underneath it, so it wasn't a big deal, but it didn't look nice. And obviously he hadn't done enough sitting and them looking at him wearing that thing with the robe over it. And then they would have made more of a crossover, so it didn't gape, you see. And the king noticed it as well. Once or twice you see him sort of nervously pushing it down, and then they were putting the crown on his head, and he couldn't do any more about it. So when you see pictures of him, you'll see this little gap. Now, that shouldn't have happened if they'd had enough time to rehearse, but they didn't. And the other thing that happened was the Queen's dress. It came right to the floor. And she had to go, when she was coming out of the abbey, there were two churchmen on either side of her. And she had to go up a step. I don't know why, but there was some sort of a step she had to negotiate. Well, the skirt was right at the floor. So when she lifted her foot to go up the step, her foot was then fouling the skirt was fouling the front of her foot. So she had to stop, and you could see she was kicking the dress forward a bit. And those two churchmen on either side of her, they were themselves because they were really worried she was going to fall over, because she had this great big heavy crown on her head, so she couldn't bend or do anything. And so you could see they were putting their hands out ready to catch her if she fell, but she managed all right. She's quite an athletic woman. She gave that dress one hell of a kick, and it went forward enough so she could put her foot on the step. So it was very quick, but I noticed things like that, you see. So, but again, if she'd have had more time to rehearse, then that skirt would have been slightly up at the front, and it wasn't.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you see? So I could tell that, and there must have been other things as well that they were covering up really well that I didn't notice. I noticed the fashion stuff. Anyway, so
speaking of fashion, I like the crown on King Charles. The Third's head was slightly tilted.
Yeah,
I like the touch because that's a famous number of Sinatra, Dean Martin, and who's the third one? I forgot. You either got or you haven't got style, and there's the line, a hat's not a hat till it's tilted. So in the
right. Right. The king and the Queen, because of the heavy clothing they were wearing, they're fairly old to begin with, and they looked really old in all that regalia because they couldn't move well. And it occurred to me that it somehow illustrated the weight of government. I know that the king doesn't have that much constitutional power, but he does have a sort of responsibility, and it really looked at that point that it was weighing him down. I found the ceremony very, and I'm not religious, the king really, the anointing, that was the stamp of God on his forehead. He takes it really seriously, and you could see it was actually weighing him down. It wasn't just the crown.
No, I felt his kind of being overwhelmed to a degree.
You felt that too?
Yeah, absolutely. When he walked slowly, and it felt like this garment, this heavy cape-like thing that he was wearing, it was weighing him down, and the crown too. And he was going with two symbols of power.
The orb and the scepter. One is the world with the cross above it, and the other is the scepter, which is, so that's godly power and that's earthly power.
It's interesting when I look at the old artwork, very old artwork, where Jesus was shown holding the orb as a symbol of the world, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I think, how could people still think that the Earth is flat when
yeah,
people knew that it was round so long?
yeah, yeah.
So there's one of the things. But how can I count this beautiful event that you just had in London, the coronation? I can only answer with the town hall by CNN with Donald Trump in the middle of it. Did it skip your attention, or you
Did
watched?
you want to talk about that? I'm interested in,
I,
because it's, okay, here I am in the United Kingdom,
yes.
looking at what looks like a man being attacked by bees. It's just one after the other, and you've got to feel sorry for him.
I didn't feel sorry for him more than I was feeling sorry for him regarding all those lawsuits that he's exposed to. And this woman, I have mixed feelings about this E. Jean Carroll. I spoke about it in Russian, and she's like a message in a bottle from the 70s and 80s, from all this free thinkers, quote unquote, free thinking journalists that can talk about anything, anytime, anywhere. Uh, any inane thing is not outside her reach. She can discuss anything in any company. That's why she's invited to write. That's why she's invited to speak. And she also she exposed herself so much. She was in this Anderson Cooper program on CNN before, when this scandal, quote unquote, was breaking out, and she expressed her admiration about rape. All of a
What?
sudden, she said, "Yeah," she said, "rape is sexy." You can see a lot of it, and she expanded on it endlessly. He had to go to a commercial. He had to cut to commercial. She announced on Facebook
I didn't get any of this. I'm just getting news that, yeah, I mean,
that
the
he has to
local,
pay her $5 million. And
right.
she used to have
That's sexy.
that's yeah. But I think she's not getting any, because you know what happened. All this facts that including the fact, and I please forgive me if it's outside of if it is outside of what we usually talk about. This lady's the Eugene Carroll's. She has a cat, or used to have a cat, and she named her cat a vagina. It shows a little certain inclination,
Are you
right?
serious? I mean, are you
It was a
absolutely
heart attack.
really? This isn't just gossip,
No, no, no.
Yuri.
It
Hang on a
was
minute. I
not
want to cough. I'm going to try muting. You tell me if there's a problem, okay?
okay. No
How's
problem.
that? Right, lovely.
And I
Okay,
didn't hear anything, and saw it nothing.
right. It's this a lot of trees around now, a lot of trees in blossom. She called her cat that?
Yes. So that's shows you that
Just a
she's
minute.
she's
Hang on.
marching to a certain
There's
drummer,
another
right?
word for a cat as well, which refers to that area.
I think that her love
Are you
for
sure? Is that,
wordplay it was showing, and is
yeah?
showing. So that's
Are you absolutely sure, or
it's been mentioned so many times by so
well?
many people. I haven't seen you see the facts like this were not admitted by the judge. He did not allow to be shown for it to be shown to the jury. Jury was not supposed to see any of it, and the only way to get it into this bloodstream of this proceeding was to present it as an appeal. So now they, in an appeal, they entered all those facts, and we were all saying why Trump didn't come, and why didn't he kind of breathe fire on them, and use the flamethrower on them, and all those other things that we want him to utilize against all those bastards. But uh, but it was extremely unfair, to put it mildly, procedure extremely unfair to him, because she was also they uncovered so many things. They uncovered her being a big fan of the Apprentice show, and
Yeah.
she loved it, and she she said, for example, her plan. Anderson Cooper of 360 program on CNN. He asked her, Why did you go with him? Why did you? I mean, she was leaving. He was coming in, according to her story, and I doubted that he would ever go. And she said he was shopping for some lady friend or something. He was married to Ivana.
Ivanka.
No, Ivanka is the daughter.
Oh, sorry.
The,
Oh, right. Yeah, I don't
please,
keep up with
please,
these
you
things.
know your stuff. I don't mind.
Right.
So yeah, so there's one photograph. He's photographed from the back, and Ivana is next to him, and in the front, looking at him, is a woman. You can see 2/3 of her face, which is E.G. and Carol, and her husband, who's black,
She was
Jack
married.
Jack Johnson. She was married. They divorced.
Right.
I think he's still alive. And he was an anchorman on TV station, one of the major stations, not like the big shot anchorman, I understand, but he was known face. And Donald Trump, he knows faces, he knows names, he remembers all those things.
Hmm.
So, and he mistook her in this photo for his second wife. He said, "Who's in this photo? Marla? It's Marla." And it was E.G. and Carol. And in
Yeah.
combination with what he said prior, he said she's not my type. And
Right.
suddenly he mistakes her for his wife, who we assume was his type, right?
Hmm.
And he also said to the prosecutor, the prosecutor, "You're not my type either," when he was deposed.
Really?
Yeah.
He just has no filters.
You cannot. It's very measured. It's very measured. You have to show the, how they call it, the hilt of your dagger. You don't need to show the sharp end. I mean,
Right.
he needs to show his attitude towards stuff.
Okay.
And I must tell you that this is in our situation here, and I think in Britain it's somewhat similar. When you sit, like I watch Piers Morgan from time to time, and he has some of those Vogue people, and they say, "Let me finish, let me finish. You don't let me finish, please let me finish," and they spew the same garbage. Why
Yeah.
should I let them finish? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this town hall with Trump. He said, to this, just gave her an air slap. This is just nonsense. What you want me to do? This nonsense. I won't be doing it. I don't want. There was this thing with Thatcher, right? Somebody wanted her to jump. Some journalists remember this. Some TV
No.
journalists came to her, to Margaret Thatcher.
Tell me.
Oof, I don't remember the details. Just popped in my head, and when she said, like, everybody is like, I went to the world leaders and the Gorbachev and this and that. They were all jumping against against hunger in the world, or some such, some poverty in the world. And I would like you to jump also, like everybody else on my program. What we do
Oh,
in
to
the end
jump.
is
Right.
to jump.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. And what did
and
she
she
say?
said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Any sane person would do it. This is the stupidity of today's pop politics, and we see how deep in doo-doo we are because of this silliness and narishkeit, as they say in some quarters in Brooklyn.
What does that mean?
Silliness.
Oh, right. Okay.
Same thing in Yiddish.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's the place here, and where we are right now in the States, and we still struggle with. I just, maybe I watched too much British programs recently, above my average level of enjoying the BBC, and I watched some Sky News Australia. I find it
Mhm. They're the best, actually.
more, yeah, no, absolutely. And I hope that, I mean, Rupert Murdoch, doesn't he watch this? Doesn't he want to fire somebody like he just fired Tucker
I
Carlson?
I have no idea, but I think firing Tucker Carlson was probably a mistake.
It depends. I don't know. People are trying to play this, use what remains of natural intelligence with all the onslaught of the artificial intelligence. They try to understand. Maybe there is some long war going on, long-term planning in Murdoch's head. But from the recent developments, they lost some. He wouldn't do it. He has a history of firing people who brought revenue to his channel, to Fox News, starting with Roger Ailes, who conceived and implemented and built this channel and made it a sensation in the media field. And Bill O'Reilly is a very, I mean, I
Yeah,
find him
yeah.
toothless and kind of limp, but he tries to be very aggressive, but his thinking is not rooted in history. He's feeling it, and he's writing books. The killing of this and killing of that, the killing of Jesus, the killing of mafia.
I don't know much about Bill. I do know that he was a big thing at one point, like the 70s, wasn't he? And then he's dropped right off my radar now.
Yeah, he's online and he's building a channel. He lives not very far on the same island as I do, on Long Island, and as does Sean Hannity. They all live out there. They all built their own studio and they're working from there. But he's online, and he has his following, people who were listening to him all his life over the country. But Tucker Carlson is gone to Twitter, and I said I gotta prepare. I gotta get comfortable with Twitter because there's some cross pollination. I'm a grain of sand, of course, in the ocean of Tucker, but it's people are going to Twitter in bigger numbers because in my audience here online, if I may say so, they rarely go to Twitter. We speak Russian. There's not too much information in Russian. We are pro-American here. We are anti-Putin. We are pro-Ukraine. And during this course of the town halls on CNN, Trump was pressed to call Putin a war criminal, and he didn't do it. Didn't call him a war criminal.
No. He said I said something like I don't really have a fight with him or something along those lines, didn't he?
How do you read this? I wanted to ask you. How do you
Look,
read this
there's
refusal?
two things going on here, and one of them, on one hand, I understand Trump's attitude. That is, you're there in America, and Europe can tear itself apart, and what does he care? The big fight is with China or the Pacific or that. I can see that. I can see that argument. I do think personally that Europe isn't taking enough responsibility for what's going on in Europe. I certainly do think that. I mean, Britain has, and interestingly enough, countries like Poland and Estonia and Romania, they are taking their share. But countries like France and Germany are doing next to nothing.
And Germany resisted for a very long time.
A long time. They had to be embarrassed into doing stuff. And Trump is quite right to complain about this. I mean, the interesting thing is that the British government isn't complaining about this in the way that it should be. We're such gentlemen, aren't we? We don't complain about the lazy neighbour 2 doors down who won't cut his grass and the neighbourhood looks like a tip. Yeah. It's that sort of thing. And I'm very disappointed with the Germans, actually. But then I think that's probably a permanent feeling most Brits have about Germany.
Yeah, so I wanted to say it comes with the territory.
Yeah. So, but, on the other hand, they are very exposed, the Germans. There's this big flat plain between them and Russia. It's very easy to attack from that area, from Poland and that sort of thing. So, to a certain extent, maybe that's their thing. You see, here we are in Britain. It's like I keep bringing it down to domestic issues. We're in an island that it's not 100% safe on an island anymore the way it was. But the national character has grown up with the idea that you're in a house and you can close all the doors if you need to. It gives you a sense of security. Whereas in Germany, they're in a house and the back door's open the whole time. And that must make them feel a little bit, nervous. So you have to make allowance for a national character that has been shaped by their geography. However, I'm still disappointed with them. Yes, I think Trump should get the Europeans together and say, you don't like Russia on your doorstep, then just get your fingers out and start doing something. And so to a certain extent, as I said, I understand that. On the other hand, I don't think it's advantageous to America to have a Europe that's in a state of destruction. You can't ignore if Europe is in flames, then America will not thrive. It will survive, but it won't thrive.
No, God forbid it happens. But the way things developed and the way things stand now, it's very different from what Putin was thinking about the situation and what Americans think the situation is and what Europe thinks the situation is. I think that in this and it's slightly more than 2 years, the Russian war machine proved itself ruthless but very rusty, to say the least, very ineffective.
Sorry. Do you know the Ukrainians say they shot down one of Russia's hypersonic missiles?
They said this, and also there's so this morning they downed a number of planes, two Su-35s, one Su-25, and two helicopters also. But Ukrainians proved to be very inventive, and literally there is a footage that is circulating since a couple of days where the a drone with a loudspeaker attached to it is flying over and also it also has some armaments on it, so it's flying over the trenches where the Russians are soldiers, and it literally hovers over a soldier and announced that you have to give up. So that's the whole different level of human interaction, if I may say so, with an enemy. But there's nothing to be gained for Donald Trump kind of throwing flames towards in this direction, in the direction of war, because you see, Biden is for Ukraine and against Russia. It also took a lot of time to put him in this position, because his starting point was, if the incursion will be short, let him do it. Putin, meaning if Russia can do it fast and quick, we will look the other way. That's what he said.
Yeah,
almost as that was the spirit of his words. The world heard it, the whole world. So Putin didn't manage to take Kyiv in 3 days, although some people who are pro-Russian, they say, oh, he came to Kyiv, but he saw there is nothing to do there, so he turned back. So he cannot finish.
Are you serious? They actually said that?
Yeah. The West has no idea. I don't know. There was one of my questions I wanted to ask you. If in England they are so in the dark as they are in Russia, as to the degree of the Russian propaganda, how stronger it is, that whatever, almost everything that Goebbels or Hitler said themselves, it's so Nazi, for lack of a better word. It's so Nazi.
Oh, yes.
Like 10 times.
I think, well, look, I am... Well, if you see my videos, I don't make videos about the war because there are other people who know a lot more about it than me. But when I've spoken, I've been sympathetic to Ukraine and anti-Putin, and I have called him a murderous fascist. So I suppose you could say my colours are nailed quite clearly to the mast. I don't know about other people. I think generally, of course, the mainstream media is all for Ukraine. And the government itself got straight into action, asking people to volunteer to look after Ukrainian refugees. I've got a couple. I've got a woman and her daughter staying with us. So
No,
I'm
people are
very
very
much for it.
people are very, very kind to refugees, and many Ukrainians some Ukrainians have already returned in significant numbers back to Ukraine. It was not like the case for them to use this opportunity to escape the poor country. But what I'm saying regarding Donald Trump is he wouldn't gain anything, and he is thinking in the ways that he's at war with the government, the current government of
Yeah.
our country. He has to prevail. He has to win. Nobody, I must say it like this full responsibility. Very few people. A lot of people are ready to fight for him, verbally, mentally, some physically, but not too many people believe that the elections would be conducted on the level.
Yeah.
So a lot of things happening, and I was banned on YouTube for 2 weeks.
Will you tell me why? What
Yeah,
happened?
I can tell you.
Just talking code. I don't want you to get banned again.
I can tell you, they know what I'm talking about. There is some development in this direction too. Last year I was running for Congress
I
in
remember.
my district versus opposite the man who became the most powerful Democrat in the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries. So I lost. I had $35,000 raised exclusively online. And he had $5 million. He had no need to discuss, to dispute,
Yeah.
to do whatever. There was one interesting piece of anti-Yuri Dashevsky print material published by the very warm and fuzzy feeling about the union of teachers union, and it was picture of me, picture of Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of
Who?
Education, Betsy
Ah,
DeVos, the woman,
okay.
Trump's administrator for this, Minister of Education,
Mm-hmm.
and Donald Trump. And all are very aggressively looking, all three. And it was saying that Yuri Dashevsky wants to take away your kids. He wants to rob you of this and that, of good education, of bright future. So all three of us were on this piece of on this mailer that it was sent to teachers in New York, and some of them are known to me. I'm known to them. They brought me this postcard. They found it in the mailbox. So that was the extent of the enemy propaganda, so to speak. So I lost, but one of the last days of my campaign, on that day, I went to a presentation of a group called New York Citizen Audit. It's a volunteer group, 1,500 strong, I think. And what they did, they're using the Freedom of Information Act here in the States. They requested the materials with the numbers of how many people have voted, how many people are registered, how many people are on paper, and how many people are in different counties. And we have all those administrative units here, so they could compare the numbers that they have, say, for a bigger unit versus smaller parts of it. And they had programmers, they had statisticians, they had all those lawyers involved in this, and they discovered the facts like there are almost 2.5 more people are registered to vote on paper than there are people living in the state of New York.
Yeah.
And other things. Everybody can see it. It's called Audit NY, AUDITNY.com.
Yeah.
There is a report. They're official. They're nonprofit. They do everything by the book. They are nonpartisan. You won't see any Democrat or a Republican. I mean, we know what they're thinking, of course.
Yeah.
We know what's on their minds. But nothing is showing, nothing that you can grab them for. So I came across, I was so upset. It was like 3 days before the election. I realized that, with this in place, you cannot ever win because there is such a big pool of dirty water, and you can take as much as you want from there. And this is what was mentioned by Donald Trump when they said, when they checked, and was more votes for Biden than for and this is where it comes from. If anybody, it's a small report, it's not very long. So I was there, and I got in touch with these people during and after the elections, the citizen audit, and I invited them to speak. What they do now, they go to every county and they arrange in person gatherings, and they show this PowerPoint or whatever they use for this presentation, and they show people their discoveries, make your own conclusions,
Yeah.
what needs to be done. They think that the voter rolls have to be kind of cleansed, showing that people voted 25 times, same person.
25.
25 times, same person. And he was purged and purged and purged and purged. It's like every 2 years you're supposed to be purged if you don't vote.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a change in the street address, same street, same zip code, area code, but same initials, but they assume it's the same person. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
you have
Okay.
no time to tell about everything, but they are jeopardizing their own project if they're lying. So the stakes are pretty high at this situation. So I invited them to Brooklyn, and I rented a place, and the place had the system that allowed me to live stream it. So I did live streaming, and I translated it in Russian. So it was like 50% Russian, 50% English. And they said that this is a misinformation. They closed me, like banned me for in 3 or 4 days, and they said that it's not disinformation. The old word was disinformation. Now it's misinformation. I'm saying that of course, I appealed. I said, this is like citizens' business. We came together to discuss, and it's our grievances that are our constitutional rights to petition the government. So we want to sit down and discuss what we know.
Yeah.
So it didn't help. No, there was no reprieve, no forgiveness, and it was my second strike, so the third strike, and I cannot be on YouTube. But the one I had, the first one has expired, and it was all about elections. There is a set of rules. It's printed there on YouTube. Printed. It's in pixels on screen. You cannot discuss the elections of 2020 in the United States. You cannot discuss the elections of, I think, 2019 in Germany, for whatever reason, and you cannot discuss elections in Brazil. So that's the geography. They're very particular on this matter. So. What else is there? So 2 weeks passed by. I was traveling, and so I would try to get on YouTube online, but it would be Facebook and what else? The Rumble, and then I discovered, you know what? These people, they made their way to the state assembly in New York, to Albany, to the
These people, you
these
mean
people
the
people
audit?
with the report. Yeah, they
Yeah.
wrote to everybody. They wrote to Donald Trump. They wrote to all the Republican leaders, all the courts, to the FBI, to the CIA, to whoever would listen, whomever address they would get a handle on, but there was no action at all. And finally, they made it to Albany, and they made the same report that everybody saw.
Yeah.
And that report is also, I don't know if it's on YouTube, it's on Rumble, but that's it's a fantastic group of people. Audit NY, they also called New York Citizen Audit. So very determined, very laser focused.
It's a bit like there's another organization called Veritas, isn't they? They take videos of officials
Yeah, it's not in that
confessing.
format anymore because there was a huge scandal. The last project for the Project Veritas, it used to be called, run by James O'Keefe, sorry, James O'Keefe, uh, youngish journalist, going by his looks. So he ambushed a guy who worked for Pfizer in some marketing capacity, like
Ah,
mid-level,
yes,
and it
yes.
was right under Brooklyn Bridge in a cafe. And there was some employee of Project, some guy with the Project Veritas, who posed, I think, as a gay person, a gay man, who wanted to make friends with this gentleman, who was a black employee, black mid-level manager in
Hmm.
marketing of Pfizer. So, as you can imagine, the conversation went totally not in favor of the vaccination situation and the COVID situation and this and that. And then, as is the ritual, James O'Keefe shows up himself and says, "Listen, we just took a video. I want to tell you that we did it, so you would be surprised, and that's now I have to say goodbye."
Yeah.
And the guy threw, understandably, he threw a tantrum. He grabbed this iPad that James O'Keefe was having in his hand. He threw it on the ground. He was running around asking to close the door, then to open the door, and to call the police, not to call the police. So it was a big to do. Anyway, after that, the board of, I didn't know Project Veritas had a board. So they decided to fire James O'Keefe, the guy
Why?
who, yeah. So he
Why?
opened his own. Uh, I'm not privy to the details. Probably they found it. Like, why Tucker Carlson was fired by
No,
Rupert
that's true.
Murdoch?
But I mean, that's a real scoop. Why would they fire him?
They fired him. He left.
Phew,
He doesn't
I
look
didn't know that.
unhappy. He doesn't look unhappy. He opened his own
Hmm.
new enterprise of similar with a similar purpose,
Yeah.
and he produced a number of videos. I don't Topics do not come to mind immediately, but they're in the same vein, the same political inclination, same target, and so he's doing okay, something with some play on words as an abbreviation. Don't remember, but the Project Veritas is not. I think it's kind of disbanded, like the Beatles. It's no more. It's no more. It's classics now.
Yeah.
But he went on. He's not idle. He's not idling. He's doing very well in terms of interest. And it's a competition in on Fox News who will take the mantle. Speaking of the mantles and crowns of Tucker Carlson, and now they try to give a week to each of the. They have a pretty good stable of speakers. And they invite them to speak for a week. And this week it was Kelly McEnany, a younger woman from who used to be Trump's press secretary.
Yes, a very bright person.
Very
I
bright
remember her.
and a good Christian, and and she's not hiding this fact, like so many do in the media in the United States in particular. But next week it will be Will Kane, also a young guy, very well outspoken, very articulate, nice, clean, as Joe Biden said about Barack Obama. So,
Oh well, yeah. Then that's
yeah. So listen, are you terrified by Joe Biden?
yeah,
His
yeah.
general presence where
Well,
he is right now.
I'm not really terrified of Joe Biden. I'm terrified of what happens if Joe Biden collapses, because
Uh,
the next in line is truly terrifying.
I don't think they will let her out of the house that day or night. They just come and say, "Listen, that's the day we were talking about."
Joe Biden is not running the country, is he? There's some sort of committee who are, pulling the strings, right?
Yeah,
But
they put sticks in his body
yeah,
in the
or
right places,
whatever.
so he looks awake. Yeah.
But so we don't know who's governing America. But there's probably a couple of brains there between them, even if it's not going in the direction I would think would be best. But if the Veep turns over, I mean, she does have, unless they drug her all the time, she does have some voice. And she's an idiot. I mean, she really is an idiot. Uh,
Someone
and
noted.
what?
No, someone noted the other day. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
Some
carry on.
Someone noted the other day that she was not that inarticulate, that stupid. During the debates, she was able, when they were debating, she was first out when they were competing for in the 2020, 2020, yes, to become the candidate for Democrat Party for president. And she was Biden's worst enemy on stage.
Yeah, that's right. I
And
remember
she
that.
was very, very kind of pointed and very disciplined, I should say, compared to what she's spewing since she became vice president.
So what
It's
happened?
like a
Do you think
switch.
did they substitute somebody else?
Medication comes to mind. Change of
Really?
I don't know. I don't know, because they all she's making no sense. She doesn't
She
make
doesn't
any
make
sense.
any sense. She repeats herself. She talks round in circles. She obviously starts saying something and then doesn't have any idea where she's going.
And she's
Uh,
laughing to her own
and
jokes.
that laugh, oh, that's terrifying.
It's from asylum, from kind of, not to insult mad
It's,
people, but
yeah.
it's
So
something.
I don't. I, Well, you see, I regarded her as somebody who can't get her thoughts together. Now you're telling me that she has demonstrated an ability that I had no idea
Some
about.
cognizy.
Didn't she? I mean, I've no. Did she sleep her way to the top, or rather, not
Uh,
sleep?
that was a phase. Yeah, let's call it this way. It was
Is
a
that an
phase.
established fact, or is that just gossip?
No, it was an established fact. She was friendly with the mayor of San Francisco, Willie Brown. I'm afraid to buck up the name, but he's a very jovial person. And I recently did a stream with a friend of mine who's a historian journalist, and we put up some pictures of her being young with him, and they met kind of when she was in her present capacity, and it looks like was very friendly again, still jovial, etc., etc. And he really helped her to get to where she was, to become the district attorney and state attorney, whatever was her position there. But she really had some, say, regulations in got some regulations in place that were much harsher on the drug dealers, and a lot of people say that the black community should hate her for this, because it's a very interesting situation where the law and folklore collide. You cannot say that all blacks are criminals, which is not true, of course, but you also cannot say that the drugs and rap music and guns and big gold chains are not part of African American culture, because it's a very paradoxical situation. And especially in light of what's going on there, the last bout of schizophrenia in California was this, what they call it, the reparations to the tune
Oh,
of a million,
that's all over the
two hundred
place.
thousand dollars. And recently, like literally yesterday, some black leader said, please don't expect this money to be as much. There may be something, but not right now, and not tomorrow. And California owns a lot of money. The way it stands right now, all this prosperous state in the hands of Democrats for so long, and they kind of demolish the place. They just ruined the place. The way they do it in New York. Uh, you know what? We're almost at 1 hour. I wanted to ask you a question
Go on.
that may be a good kind of day cap, night cap. But we'll be talking more soon, I hope. I found that the thing that they want to implement in New York, that is called means tested ticketing of the vehicles. Is it a common thing in England? When
You
you
mean if you get a parking fine, you pay according to your financial situation?
Yes, if you drive a Bentley, you're doomed. They take
Right.
all your money away. Is it the case?
No. There's a fine is a fine is a fine round here.
Because my friend in London said that there is this thing that you had for a long time. So,
Not that I ever was aware of. I
because
could be wrong.
yesterday in New York, they tried to they actually uh, made it a law. They made a weight discrimination illegal. You cannot be denied. I never heard that anybody would be denied an apartment or residence
Because they're too fat.
because too fat. Yeah. And they made it a law, so you cannot be denied the apartment if you're too fat, and also you cannot be hired. I mean, they refuse the job if you're too. So
Well, having an apartment, I can't see what your weight would have to do with it. But certain jobs, surely you need to be fairly nimble on your feet.
yeah, when I see our cops, and I respect the blue and so on and so forth, and YPD, the best and brightest and the fastest and bravest, and the requirement was for a cop to be able, from the 30s or 20s, to be able to jump over a 6-foot fence, and I don't see our cops being able to do so, frankly.
I haven't seen many New York cops recently, so I'll have to stay silent on that one.
But would London cops or British cops be able to do so?
Well, I don't know about a 6-foot fence, but I've never seen an particularly overweight policeman.
Yeah,
So
probably. Yeah, but in our situation here, not it's like with the army. There's also some problems with recruitment, because physically there's not too many fit potential recruits. So people want to serve, but they cannot pass the physical test. And in the police, it's the same situation. And uh, almost every Dunkin' Donuts place has a police cruiser, like, parked permanently in front of it. Doesn't help. But yeah, we have so many things going on here, and unfortunately, not too many of them are good things in New York, in particular, like this disgusting incident on the subway where the guy tried to shield the passengers from a homeless guy. You can
yeah, and he died, didn't he?
He died, but they didn't say what he said. A compression of neck, but there was not a full analysis, the full results of this biopsy, whatever they did on
Yeah,
him. So to say, because the guy made it to a list of 50 the craziest people in New York, the guy
yeah,
who died,
yes,
and
yes,
it
yes.
takes some effort to get there. The photos people see of him are from 2011,
Hmm.
where he's dressed as Michael Jackson. Since then, things went downhill for him.
Yeah, there
But
were
then,
people posting stuff on social media about stay away from him, weren't they?
yeah, and also there's a like one camera. I cannot imagine only one person was filming it with the phone.
Hmm.
There should be other angles, and
Yeah,
I know that they don't talk about it much, but there is quite a number of witnesses who are thankful to this.
he's an ex-Marine.
He's an ex-Marine. He was
Yeah.
looking for a job as a bartender. The family is middle class, good family. He's a good-looking guy, very,
Hmm.
very attractive young man, and the way the soldier should be, the way a hero should look. And he passes like 10 on every aspect of his behavior. and we need more people like this.
Yeah.
And when the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, who's like sworn enemy of Donald Trump and sworn enemy of white people, and he's funded by George Soros's organizations, and all the fact checkers say it's not so, but it is so. He
Hmm.
got $1 million for his campaign, as well as people who are protesting in New York streets, in the subways, with the pre-produced, made in advance posters versus this incident versus
Yeah.
the white
Yeah.
people. Those people are also paid by organizations. They're members of, it's called Voice and Why, and it's also funded by and Soros. That
Hmm.
was discovered fairly. It was never a secret. So what they see, what you see is in the media. I don't know about England. I think it's the same situation in the UK, but in New York, a lot of media is just whipping this, going into this foam, endlessly trying to amplify efforts and
It's a bit
opinions.
like that kid who shot the fellows who were chasing him. What was his name?
Um, Kyle
Kyle. Yeah,
Rittenhouse.
Rittenhouse. Yes, and it's quite obvious that they were they were after his life,
There were three
and
people. Yeah,
yeah, they were actually going for him. One with a gun, one with a skateboard or something.
yeah.
It's quite obvious that Rittenhouse was just defending himself,
Yeah.
and this guy was defending everybody in the carriage, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he did not speak to this fella whose life ended on this train. This um Jordan,
Jamie,
no,
George.
Jordan, no, no, Nelly, something like this.
Yeah, I
Um,
remembered the J bit.
yeah, but Daniel Penny is the name of this Marine, ex-Marine,
Hmm.
and he's out on the bail of $100,000. He put up his own $6,000, and his parents guaranteed the rest. So there will be, I think, in July there will be another session of this court, and we'll see how this all will transpire. I hope that people who were on the train will be very vocal.
Yeah,
If they
yeah.
won't stand up
Wait,
for this guy, then
where are they? Where's the trial? In New York,
in
or
New York, everything is in New
he's not
York.
going to get a fair trial, is he?
There are
I
already
mean,
people in
they
the
can
street.
stand up there and say that Angel Gabriel was standing next to him, telling him to do it, and he'd still be condemned for it, surely.
All I can say, we only can count on people's weakness, in good sense and in bad sense. People are weak. Judges are weak. If they see something that they could get for making this just and fair, this trial, they will do so. If
Judges
they
in America are elected, aren't they?
some are appointed, some are elected. I mean, there is a whole situation where president appoints judges, conservative judges. I mean, if it's a Republican president, but yeah, there is elections
So,
for judges,
so they have to take the mob into account, haven't they? Because it's the mob who's voting for them.
especially when they stand in front of the houses where they live, the private residences, and like with this president during the. You see, it's depends who the president is, because you remember the case with Supreme Court justices Gorsuch, Kavanaugh. Then there was Coney Barrett, judge, the last appointed during Trump administration.
Hmm.
So they had incessant demonstrations with
Yeah.
threats in front of the houses. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, all the conservative judges had these protests, and cops came and they said, "You cannot do it." They said, "We can do it as long as you don't stand in front of the house." So they went around the block during the whole day, banging on the pots and yelling and singing and doing all kind of crazy stuff. And all of a sudden, this justice system was immobilized. They grab people on the street, the homeless people on the street for nothing, or righteous citizens for nothing, and all of a sudden, those disruptors in not the worst areas, as you can imagine, in Washington D.C.
Hmm.
or Maryland or wherever they live, the judges, they were out of the options. They had to let this whole thing to continue. So it's two-tier justice, as they say now in the United States, and I expect it to remain so until the next election, at least. At least it is just unconscionable group of people who are really driven by motives we don't understand. If we not call, what it is, call it for what it is, a desire to destroy this country and
Hmm.
desire to do there's a terrible word, how they call it, the not the great reset, but just great replacement.
Oh, I've heard of that.
That's
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's one of the things. And if you, it walks like a replacement, if it quacks like a replacement, if it talks like a replacement, then it is
Then
a
it's a
replacement,
replacement.
right? So that's not a good news, but we're alive, and that's good news. And
Yeah,
we met finally is good
and
news.
we're still fighting.
Yeah, and we will continue to do so. Demi, thank you so very much. I'm so
Thank you for
happy
having me.
to reconnect. And if you want, I will do a report on my trip. It was pretty James Bondian trip. We went to Jordan, we went to Rome, we went to Casablanca for 19 hours, and then to New York. The London was missing from this route, but that's
Did
from one
next
movie.
time? Next time you come to London, then we definitely will have to. You'll have to come and stay with
Yeah,
us.
we'll do something crazy then.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much again, everybody. Thank you
Okay.
for watching, and have a great, great weekend
Bye.
wherever you are.